And if I hear about Aboriginal land rights from a priest, I'm probably going to throw a hymn book at his head. And it's quite clear that biblically that there's not a place for it, but because there was a group of people who just wanted to have segregated services, or and not just segregate, they wanted to have only vaccinated people attending church.
I actually think that's pretty reasonable compared to the churches, though.
Something terrible is going to happen. He said, you need to get out of the pit now. And I'm sitting up the back and I almost had tears running down my face. And I'm not kidding you here, you're not going to believe me, but I had another Bible and I did it a third time. And within moments, like, well, not even moments, seconds of me starting to pray, he started screaming. Can I tell just one more story that I've skipped over, right? This is highly unusual, what I'm about to say right now, but...
Welcome back to another episode of the Don't Be Deceived podcast, which we take from Galatians 6:7. Today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. George Christensen is a former politician in Queensland of the Liberal National Party, quitting the party and Parliament and then pledging his allegiance to Paul Hanson's One Nation Party. Considered controversial for encouraging parents not to take the magic potion. Catch my drift? Currently, George Christensen is making a difference in a new way by hosting his own segment on the only 24/7 online news talk station dedicated to freedom globally, TNT, which focuses on the climate crisis, pandemics, big tech censorship, digital control, government tyranny, corruption, propaganda, democracy. Only George's twist is discussing these topics with the understanding that the cure is not exposing these issues, but focusing on faith at the core. Lauren and I were very blessed to be on his show not too long ago, and here we are to introduce George Christensen, whose, I think, biggest role is as loving husband, father, and a Christian. In that vein, we will start today with a Bible verse, John 8:32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So everybody, welcome. Amen. The wonderful George Christensen. Woo! Round of applause.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, Lauren. Good to be on your podcast.
Yay.
It's a blessing. Yeah. Well, we went on your radio station and now you're on our show. So that's pretty cool.
Even though.
Yes, Mutual Admiration Society in play, but it was a very good interview that you girls did on my show. And you're right, TNT Radio is fantastic because it is basically the alternative news media source globally.
It is.
So it's a real honour to actually be hosting a show on that radio station. So thanks for that intro.
We spoke to a former alumni of yours because we heard when we interviewed Graham Hood, he mentioned he too was on that platform, and I had no idea about that. So clearly, it really does dedicate itself to people who are about free speech.
Yeah, I mean, that's its mantra, is to be the voice of freedom globally, and not the the freedom that's put out by outfits like the Voice of America, which just become propaganda units for the military-industrial complex and the deep state in the United States. So this is about true freedom, and a lot of freedom froms rather than freedom fors. There's a lot of people that come up with these fake freedom for things that's got to do with the new woke ethos that we currently live in this day and age. But really, our freedoms are freedom from tyranny, freedom from oppression. There's many freedom froms that actually governments in this day and age really don't listen to, don't uphold.
It's a sad state of affairs that we're in. It's upside down land at the moment in most of the Western world.
Correct.
Well, the way we usually structure the show is to hear your Christian testimony, and then we sort of branch out into whatever topics we end up being relevant. So do you want to sort of give us a little introduction into how and when and why you became a Christian, and like maybe if that somehow delves into your political career too, maybe you can talk about that. But the floor is yours.
Well, thanks very much for that, dear, and thank you, Lauren. I guess I'll start at the end and I'll get to the beginning. So actually what I do right now is more than just TNT Radio. TNT Radio is sort of a great hobby to have on the weekends, but I actually publish a newsletter called Nation First as well, which isn't necessarily Christian, but I do find myself more and more slipping Christian elements into that newsletter and into my writings. So that goes out daily. People can find that at nationfirst.substack.com. But more importantly, I've actually just been appointed, and this is probably the first podcast I've done where I've announced this, that I've just been appointed the campaigns director for an organisation called Citizen Go, which basically is the opposite of the George Soros network. So the Move On organisations, the Get Ups of the world, Citizen Go, which you can go and look up at citizengo.org. They have people in about 50 different countries across the world, and I'm the one for Australia. So we run campaigns that are all about family, faith, freedom, about life, pro-life that is, but also about patriotism versus globalism. So I'm still pretty active, obviously, in the political sphere, but now I guess I can strap on the Christian armour more than probably could be tolerated in parliamentary politics, because you do get a lot of pushback when you do that. But this organisation is unashamedly Christian, and it's got a Christian social outlook on the world. So that's why they're very big on defending life, defending the family, defending faith, defending freedom, and also defending patriotism. So I'm going to enjoy that role pretty thoroughly. But you've asked the question, where did it all begin? How did it get to that point? Look, I guess my Christian journey, if I go back to my earliest memory, began when I was just a kid. My grandmother would drag me along to church. I didn't necessarily want to go, but I went, and pardon the pun, it became a religious observance. It really did. And I even got conned into doing it, because every time that I would go, my grandmother afterwards would take me to the news agency and buy me a little golden book. So I used to love those things. So
I remember those. I used to read the golden books.
So I would go
Right.
for the golden books. But I guess
What is the golden book?
It's an activity book.
Yeah, they're just picture books, little picture books that you can
Right.
get. So anyway, but that sort of phase comes and goes, but it gives you a bit of a foundation. Now, my grandmother was a Roman Catholic, so that was a sort of Christian tradition that I was brought up in. But then I started to think more about faith when I was a teenager. It waxed and waned a bit, and I've got to say that was my story throughout most of my early years, even right throughout my 20s. I thought long and hard about my faith when I was in late teens, early 20s, actually. So much so that I felt that I had a calling to the priesthood. And obviously that didn't get seen through with the Roman Catholic priesthood, although I did go to a come and try event at a seminary and got accepted into a seminary, actually, but it didn't work out because of a couple of things. Internal qualms, sort of not feeling sure about that pathway, and also, and probably more so, my family were were dead against it. So it would have led to irreparable damage to family relationships had I have gone down that track. So I didn't end up going. And but can I just tell you one story? Because you asked for testimonies, is interesting. So why would any red-blooded male in his right mind who actually had a girlfriend at the time at university want to become a Roman Catholic priest, right? So I thought, this is just stupid. Why you keep on having these thoughts? And interestingly, it was sort of my girlfriend's fault at the time, because she was a very strong Catholic, and she had brought me back into regularly going to church. And after a while of regularly going back, something just happened, and it like a switch flipped on. And so I told her, and I was very worried about telling her what I had been feeling and thinking, of course. And the worry was right, because it freaked her out. But she actually said to me, have you asked God about this? And it was the one thing that I hadn't done. I was almost scared to do it. And so I obviously must have had a flair for the melodramatic all my life. So I went to the local cathedral, and it was the middle of the day. There was no one in there. I went in, I knelt down, and I asked aloud, because there was no one in the church, right? Why am I having these thoughts? What is it that you want from me? And almost immediately, like if I was to say to you, how you going, dear, or how's your day been, Lauren? And you would respond, nearly immediately to that question. So I said, what do you want of me? And immediately a bird flew into the church, and the bird flew into the church, and the bird landed in a beam that was right above and just in front, so I could see it, of where I was kneeling. And some people say, well, that's complete and utter coincidence, and it may be, but the story doesn't end there. The bird then proceeds to fly, after it's rested on the perch for a moment, proceeds to fly right down to the front of the church, and lands on a beam that's sort of in the sanctuary, in the area where the altar is. And the bird sort of stayed there for another moment, and then it flew directly out of the church. And that people talk about God speaking to them, and I think that God possibly
white dove.
It was a pigeon, right? We don't have doves much in Australia. But
I know.
And so, but it was a freaky moment, right? Because I wasn't into that sort of stuff. Like God actually, I'd never had that experience before of God talking to me. But I do believe that God did speak to me at that stage. But there was obviously these other issues that come up. As I said, I didn't go through with the seminary journey. I then completely fell out, completely become a lapsed Christian, and went backpacking, did the ways of the world, too much alcohol, too many women, to be quite honest, and then eventually came back to normality, to sanity, and after a while came back to the faith. And when I came back to the faith, I actually thought, I'm going to be a bit discerning about all of this instead of just going back to the Roman Catholic Church. Although I still had those sensibilities, I still had those the Roman Catholic devotions and prayers. That's all something that's deeply ingrained in me. So it was my first port of call. But the one thing that annoyed me about the Roman Catholic Church is that even way back then, they were woke. We didn't even use the term woke, but they were woke. And, you would hear more sermons about Aboriginal land rights than you would about abortion. And so I remember saying, and I make a joke about it, but actually I remember saying at the time, to someone, and I can't remember who it was, but I was talking about I'm going to go back to church. And I said, but I'm really hesitant to go back to the Catholic Church because every time I go there, they give this politically correct sermon. It's just like, it'd be something about Aboriginal land rights, right? And if I hear about Aboriginal land rights from a priest, I'm probably going to throw a hymn book at his head. And sure enough, I went to the church, and sure enough, the sermon was on Aboriginal land rights. I kid you not. I mean,
what space
of all things. Well, I mean, they don't have to have a space in the scripture. They really, they just, it just becomes, this is part of Catholic social teaching. So we're going to talk about Aboriginal land rights and how it's,
It's funny because the Catholics have conquered the world through the sword, similar to Islam.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Goodness. Anyway, that's funny.
Something you would expect from people.
Yes.
Well, it just depends what Catholic. You're right. It just depends what Catholic church you go to. Unfortunately, there are far too many Roman Catholic churches like that these days. I'd say probably the majority of them. So anyway, I thought to myself, no, I'm done. That's a sign if there ever was one. I make a joke out of it, and then the joke becomes reality. I didn't throw the hymn book at the priest's head, by the way. I just got up and left. I literally
bummer.
got up and left.
That was a great visual you just took away.
So I went wandering then. I looked at all different faiths. Presbyterian, didn't look at Uniting because I knew that they were shocking on that front. And again, actually, I correct myself now. Since then, I found out that even the Uniting Church has a spectrum as well. There are some very, very faithful ministers and people in the Uniting Church. But I went to the Lutherans, I went to Pentecostals, whatever. And, I don't know, nothing was really gelling with me, and probably shouldn't have been thinking about it being about me, but that's how I did think at that time. And then I happened to be walking past an Anglican church, and it was the only one that I didn't really think about. And because I did think they were a little bit screwy too sometimes, the Anglican church, but I walked past this Anglican church, and I looked at a little sign at the front that said Mass 6:00. Or church service 6:00, or Holy Communion or something like that. Anyway, I looked at the time, it was 5:55. Okay. I walked in, so I had nothing better to do. So I walked into the church, and the priest was a fellow, and I'm just not going to remember his name now, Alan Hitch, that was his name, Father Alan Hitch. He was what they call a Society of Holy Cross priests in the Anglican Church. It's like an order or a group that some of these Anglican ministers belong to, and they're very traditional. They're very Bible believing. They're very sacramental. As I said, they believe the Bible. They're very pro preaching the gospel, and it was just amazing. And I thought, whoa, where has this been all my life? So there I stayed, and without wanting to bore people to death about intra-denominational issues, but the Anglican Church has quite a few. And one of the things is that while I was there with this priest, things were good. That priest left, another priest came in. She actually was pretty liberal.
Female priest.
Yeah. And it was an issue with me too. I know that's not politically correct to say, but it was an issue with me. It's
an issue with me, and I go to an Anglican church currently. So I understand.
So people have two views on that. You can either have the biblical, well, you can have both actually, and I do have both. You can have the biblical one, which basically says that I think Paul, and I just can't recall the verse, but talks about women not teaching in the church. And so it's quite clear that biblically that there's not a place for it. But also, if you believe, as I do, in the sacraments, and you believe that the gift of ministry has been handed down, through the apostles, basically, Christ said to his apostles, I'm giving you this authority to continue on my teaching. And the apostles then gave their apostolic authority to others, who gave it on to others, who gave it on to others, who gave it on to others. That is what I believe in. And you know what? Throughout all of history, up until this century, that authority has only been gifted to men. And there's a reason for that. So it is a novelty, and it's a novelty that an experiment, you could say, that actually the majority of the Christian world does not engage in. If you say the Catholic Church, they don't have female ministers. The Orthodox Church don't have female ministers. There's quite a number of evangelical churches and Pentecostals that don't either. So the vast majority of the Christian world does not have female ministers. So I don't believe in that. So it was an issue. But the bigger issue was the liberalism, the revisionism, I should say, that was being brought into the preaching and the teaching of the gospel. So
can I have you hold your thought for a second?
Yes.
Don't lose your thought. I just wanted to interject really briefly because, as you know quite a bit about my history and the morons that I should not have associated with. I just wanted to say that there are people who interpret the Bible, and it's usually in those sort of extreme far-right circles that say women shouldn't even speak, women can't teach. That's not actually the case. Women can teach Sunday school. Women can be at the Anglican church that I attend. There is a female minister, but she does more she doesn't talk on stage. If she does talk on stage, it's to introduce the main minister, or she'll go to different Bible studies throughout and sort of do a HR type of a thing, make sure that it's all running well. Women have a role, but it shouldn't be the role to completely lead. But if it's a husband-wife team and the woman has something to say, that's not leading a ministry. That's, under the covering of your husband. The Proverbs 31 woman is actually a formidable force. And so women actually do have a place. I just felt the need to state that. But please continue. I apologize.
You're right. And I agree with everything you've said.
Yes.
Probably be one point of difference. I think before I said something about a ministry, and you said you don't believe in women in ministry. I think women can have a place in ministry.
Yeah, like teaching Sunday school.
Yes, it's just not the leadership of the church. It's not the apostolic ministry.
Yeah,
right.
That involves preaching. That involves
for sure.
For me, my faith background, sacramentalism. I just don't think that women have a place in presiding over the Lord's Supper. Or things like that, right? So that's and it's not just me. People might say, "Are you bigot?" Well, I'm a bigot along with the Roman Catholic Church, the vast majority of the Christian world, actually. But anyway, I to cut a long story short, because it will be a long story. I left the Anglican Church. I left the Anglican Church as well. Sort of. I left the mainstream Anglican Church, and what was killing it for me was the adoption of same-sex marriage blessings, just liberalism that just seemed to creep in more and more into a lot of sections of the church, and then the straw that broke the back was almost already broken, but the straw that broke that camel's back was when they introduced vaccine mandates for any form of church leadership. If you wanted to volunteer, if you wanted to be a Eucharistic minister, if you wanted to do anything that had any sort of sense of formality within the church, that they made you show your vaccination status, and it had to be vaccinated. And then to rub salt into the wound, and they thought, oh, this is a good way of dealing with, the two different arguments here. Because there was a group of people who just wanted to have segregated services, and not just segregate. They wanted to have only vaccinated people attending church. So I think, to say something kind, the leadership of the church in my part of the world drew a line around that, and they might have thought they were doing the right thing with what they come up with, but it still was a step too
questionable.
What they said is that no. All current services that are on offer have to be open to everyone, but each parish will be entitled to hold an extra service that can be for only vaccinated people. So that it was just a line in the sand. You know, if you're going to start,
I actually think that's pretty reasonable compared to the churches.
well, of
I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I know that for you pissed you off, but that's pleasantly surprising to hear that. That to me doesn't sound that bad.
Look, I to an extent I agree, but just a remind you that the other rule was that anyone who wanted to do anything formal within the church had to be vaccinated. So it wasn't just, you know, but anyway, it was all a step too far for me, and I thought, I'm just not going to deal with it. Actually, I attend what they call a continuing Anglican church at the moment, a traditional breakaway Anglican church. It's a very small denomination, but the bishop that is in charge, he actually isn't vaccinated either, and was dead opposed to it. So, there you go. It's a different world. So, and very Bible believing, very traditional, very sacramental. So that's the denomination I belong to. Can I tell just one more story that I've skipped over? Right.
This is your hour.
It's another one like that one with the bird, right? And so these things just to happen from time to time, not often in my life. But I think it was in my late 20s. It was just at the point where I'd sort of come back to the church, and I was dating this girl, and things were sort of getting a bit serious. But there was a few issues, and anyway, I won't go into the travesty of it all, because it was a travesty. But let's just say that there was infidelity, right? And I was in a dark place after that. I mean, I had to go and see a psychologist. I had really bad thoughts. I went on leave from my employment. I would wake up in the morning and just lie in bed, not wanting to do anything. Like something triggered badly in me that just caused me almost to not function. And this went on for a number of weeks, right? And it was the same thing. You just did not want to do anything. You didn't want to be anything. You just wanted to like have the lights off and forget about everything. And so then an old friend, someone who I'd met through work, but he'd become a friend, and he was a pastor. And he actually contacted me, and this had been weeks before, because I thought he was already an ordained minister in the Uniting Church, right? This is why I say I know there's faithful people in the Uniting Church. But it turns out that he wasn't. He was what they call a lay pastor. And so he'd been doing that job for years and years and years. And they eventually said, do you want to become a minister of the word? And he said, yes. So he had his ordination, and he invited me to his ordination because we were mates. We could catch up every so often. So I went to his ordination, and it's right in the middle of this period where I didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to be it. So I sort of turned up, just before, sat at the back and sort of, sat through the service and, watched it all happen. But then his preacher, he got his childhood preacher there. I think that's what it was, his childhood preacher. And so this guy gave this great sermon. It was fantastic. Can't remember it, but it was really good. But at the end of it, what I remember is this. He said, now I don't normally do this. And he said, and honestly, he said, you can ask, you in here, you can ask my wife, you can ask people that know me here. This is highly unusual, what I'm about to say right now, but I've been given a message and I've got to say it. And he said, I had a dream last night. And the dream was I was driving down a country road, and there was a sheep, a woolly sheep, and it was caught in a fence. And all of its wool was caught in this barbed wire fence. And I stopped and I looked at the sheep that was trying to pull itself off the fence, but it couldn't pull itself off the fence. It was tangled, completely tangled. And I walked over and I thought, how can I deal with this? It's really tangled. I can't even pull it out. And I said in my dream, God, what am I to do here? And just as I said that, I looked down in the dream, of course, and I had a pair of clippers. And so I started clipping the sheep's wool away from the fence. And then I woke up. I'd freed the sheep and then I woke up. And he said, and I always would, whenever I have my moments with God, this preacher said, it's always around 4 a.m. And he said, and I woke up and it was 4 a.m. And I went, okay, this is a God thing. And I sat and I prayed about it. What was that dream about? And then I heard, he said, it came to my head and I heard clearly. He said, there's someone here tonight who is in a pit, in a pit of darkness. And he said, and you have to get out of that pit, like now. He said, get out now.
Wow.
Because God has a work for you. And if you stay there, something terrible is going to happen. He said, you need to get out of the pit now. And I'm sitting up the back and I almost had tears running down my face, actually, because every fiber in my body knew it was me that he was talking about. And so I left before, anyway, but actually the guy who was getting ordained cornered me just before I, made the getaway. And he said, oh, thanks very much for coming, George. He goes, he said, I don't know why, but that he's talking about the sheep, because I just got the feeling it was about you. Okay, bye. And I wandered off. Now, and it goes on. The story goes on. It's just, but I try not to bore you. But I get home, and I had a good friend who was a Baptist, and she really knew a Bible. And I said, I contacted her, and I said, look, I just need to talk to someone about something that just happened and about what's going on. And I said, and I told her, and there was quiet on the phone, and she said, you need to go and get your Bible now, hang up the phone after we finish this, go and read Psalm 139 and just read it. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Got off the phone to her. I picked up my Bible, right? Picked up the Bible. I opened it to Psalm 139. Picked it up, opened it, and I opened it to Psalm 139.
That's God for you.
Weird. So I read it, but it was a King James version. And
that's the best version.
Would you like to read it for us?
Exactly. I will.
Oh, good idea.
I will indeed read it from the King James version. But the story goes on. I'll find it and then read it. But I actually then went for another more modern, like ESV or something like that, in RSV or something, to read what those words meant in modern parlance, right? Picked up a copy of that Bible, opened it up, and again, opened it directly up to Psalm 139.
Nuts.
And I'm not kidding you here. You're not going to believe me, but I had another Bible, and I did it a third time.
So it
happened
was
3 times in a row.
So it was trying to let you know something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is
3 times in a row is a message.
This is Psalm 139 from the King James. O Lord, thou hast searched me out and known me. Thou knowest my downsitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts long before. Thou art about my path and about my bed, and art acquainted with all my ways. For lo, there is not a word in my tongue, but thou, our Lord, knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful and excellent for me. I cannot attain unto it. Whither shall I go then from thy spirit? Or whither shall I go then from thy presence? If I climb up into heaven, thou art there. If I go down to hell, thou art there also. If I take the wings of the morning and remain in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there also shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, peradventure, the darkness shall cover me, then shall my night be turned to day. Yea, the darkness is no darkness with thee, but the night is as clear as the day. The darkness and light to thee are both alike. For my reins are thine. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks unto thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My bones are not hid from thee, though I be made secretly and fashioned beneath in the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being imperfect, and in thy book were all my members written, which day by day were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. How dear are thy counsels unto me, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I tell them, they are more in number than the sand. When I wake up, I am present with thee. Will thou not slay the wicked, O God? Depart from me, ye bloodthirsty men. For they speak unrighteously against me, and thine enemies take thy name in vain. Do not I hate them, O Lord, that hate thee? And am I not grieved with those that rise up against thee? Yea, I hate them right sore, even as though they were mine enemies. Try me, O God, and seek the ground of my heart. Prove me and examine my thoughts. Look well if there be any way of wickedness in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Or with that end, amen.
Wow, that's powerful. Psalm 139 for your situation.
Yeah, how
Being
telling.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
He's
it's
literally you to examine your heart, and
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And I do turn
what
back
did
to
you
Psalm
after that?
139 a lot. Oh, after that, I got out of the hole. After that, I started. I just I pardon the French.
How did you get out of the hole?
I just got up and I got going. That's what I did.
Wow.
You stopped dwelling.
Yeah, I just, and of course, it's not like, suddenly all of those bad feelings just went. It's like, no, you just got to say, well, they're still there. I hope to be relieved of them at some point, but, they're not going to get better by me just sitting around lying in bed and feeling sorry for myself. You know how they're going to get better. They're going to be better by moving on, by doing things, by going to church, by reading the Bible, by helping others, by going to work, by doing a good day's work, by communicating with friends, by doing other things. So there's got to, I'd say two things here. One, my chain was jerked in a good way by God to sort of just say, come on, get up, get out of this slumber. But there has to be an element of, when you're talking about this is not about salvation, okay? This is just simply about depression, about being in a dark place. There's got to be an element of your own willingness to heed that call and just get up and get moving, and I think that's been an important lesson for me because, particularly when I started getting deep into federal politics, there can be moments that are incredibly rough, and you will find yourself back in that moment of, I'm just in a dark place and I don't want to do anything. But now you've got the tools, the utensils to get out of that dark place, and so I think that's important to know as well.
It seems like you were waiting to hear from God whilst you were in the midst of that hole. It's like knowing that there is nothing else that can save you except Jesus.
Yeah. Mm.
He is
It wasn't,
our deliverer, and
at the time, it wasn't a conscious thing that I was waiting for. It wasn't a conscious, but I think you're right. In retrospect, whether I knew it or not, I was waiting for a word, and I got the word.
But he doesn't always show up in those situations. I remember watching, I don't know whether you know who Dave Rubin is, Lauren, but he's someone I quite like watching, his evolution from becoming an atheist to he's a gay man, but he's like now aware that there is something higher. And he said to Ben Shapiro, when I was on Mount Sinai, I wanted my God moment. And it never happened. So sometimes God doesn't show when you want him to. I think God shows when you need, when he wants you to. I mean, I'm not saying that you're debating that. I just find it interesting that in George's case, he was waiting and God responded. But in the case of someone else who's like, all right, I'm ready, and God just, there's nothing there.
Just to clarify, I think at that point in time, though, dear, I wasn't waiting. Like, it wasn't like...
But you just said subconsciously, according to what Lauren had stated, that you sort of were...
subconsciously, perhaps subconsciously I was, but it wasn't like a conscious thing that I was...
I understand.
I'm waiting to hear from someone. But how can I say it better? Because I don't know whether subconsciously I was.
Sure.
The point is that I heard him at the moment that I needed to hear him. And I think that that's the case for a lot of things. We can't force God. Of course, I've been to Mount Sinai as well. I've been to, all of those holy places throughout the Holy Land in Jerusalem and on the outskirts, Bethlehem. I've been to when the ascension is supposed to have happened, where Gethsemane. Yeah, actually, I was about to say, I don't think that I had a spiritual moment, a real deep spiritual moment in those places, but I'm wrong. I went to the Garden of Gethsemane with a group of other people from a church, and it was a spontaneous thing, actually. We went, it was Holy Thursday, and the priest suddenly just said, hey, everyone, let's file out of the church. We got a cross. Here it is. We're going to carry the cross up to Mount Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane. Sorry, on that. It is a mount, but I just can't remember what the mount is called. But anyway, we walked from the church. It wasn't very far. It was a good probably 20-minute walk. We hiked it up to the Garden of Gethsemane, and there we waited. So it would have been about 9 o'clock at night, and the plan was we were going to see, Holy Thursday out until midnight, and then we're going to go. And so we sort of said some collective prayers, and then there were moments of silence, back to collective prayers. And it would have been just before midnight. And I don't know, again, the atheist or agnostic would say, oh, this is because of this or that, because there's a lot of people coming into Jerusalem for the Holy Week and all the rest of it. But it wasn't just me. Other people who were there also heard and felt it. In the 15, 20 minutes before midnight, it was like there was a cacophony, like of madness, like just noises that were getting louder and louder and louder from all within Jerusalem. And it became incredibly loud right up until midnight. And then at midnight, boom, it's like it just fell, not silent, but the din just dissipated. And so that was like it was like watching a movie, like when the music sort of amping up, building that suspense. So that was...
Sure. Call to prayer for the Muslims?
That was in there. That was all part of it. Yeah, there was all of that going on. Yeah. That's what I was saying. Like, it wasn't just that. It was like the noise of traffic, the noise of people, the noise of everything. It was just like someone was turning the volume up and up and
Wow.
until it hit midnight, and then it all just sort of fell. But yeah, you're right. The call to prayer was part of that cacophony of noise. But we'd been hearing that all day. Like, it wasn't anything unusual. It was just at this point in time, it sort of felt very different. And
that is strange. Trying to visualize that. That sounds
well, it was incredibly strange. So, but it felt like it was one of those sort of special moments. And while we're talking about moments like that, another thing that sort of also has affected my faith journey was this bizarre moment. That's all I can tell you. It was just bizarre. I went to a place in Central Europe, and I went to a church there, and I was there for a service. It was a packed church, and this guy made a slight noise, like a cross between a cough and a grunt, like not very loud, but he was probably arm's distance behind me, and so he made this sort of noise like that, like just loud enough for me to hear, and maybe a few other people that were around him. And it wasn't particularly, it was like that, exactly like that noise that I made then, right? So it wasn't particularly like a bad noise, a scary noise. But when he made it, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And I just thought, oh, something is wrong here. Like, something is horribly wrong. That sense overcome me. And I started praying for him. For whatever was going on with him. He, within moments, like, well, not even moments, seconds of me starting to pray, he started screaming. And then his voice changed from a human scream to this animalistic scream. And I didn't want to turn around, because I thought, this is horrific. I don't want to turn around and look at what's going on there. But I did sort of look down like that, because he dropped to the floor, right? And so I looked when he dropped to the floor, and he was writhing around on the floor like a snake. People said, "Oh, that's an epileptic fit." But my mum was an epileptic. I know what epileptic fits look like. Like, that wasn't an epileptic fit. He was epileptics make jerky movements, and they tend to become really rigid. And he was as loose as he was, writhing like a serpent. Goodness. And it was the freakiest thing. Anyway, I didn't do anything apart from just keep on praying. And there were a couple of priests there that came and attended to this person and took him away. So that's also one thing that's and I mention it because I'm acutely aware of evil. Like, I just I don't know how to say that without sounding like a mad person. But I can even remember times back when I was younger and sitting there looking at an event I was in or something that I was part of, and actually almost even seeing a presence of evil, like, move amongst what was going on. I didn't see it, right? But I'm saying, like, this feeling that something ominous and bad is really happening here. And from time to time, I get that feeling.
I've never had an experience like that, but Lauren told me a story that scared the hell out of me. Remember when you said that you saw a little girl at the end of your bed?
Oh, yeah. I've got plenty of stories.
That freaked me out.
But, I think it's part of...
a black-eyed child. I've heard of that.
Part of the gift of discernment, when you're given the ability to discern fact from fiction, there's also the ability to discern good from evil in the spiritual realm. And I think that, some people are given that I personally don't consider it a gift. I don't like it when I see that darkness, but some people have it, some people don't.
I don't. Praise God.
And
when I was actually, a memory is just flooding back to me about the same topic. When I was
a black-eyed child.
No, actually, but something very similar, because what you're talking about, well, let me just say a little bit about my story, then I'm going to ask you a question, Lauren. So it would have been about the time that I was thinking about becoming a Roman Catholic priest and entering a seminary, right? I started to have bad dreams, but the dreams were horrifically realistic. What they were was that I would be in my room where I was sleeping, and I could see everything in the room, but I couldn't move. Could you move when that child was at the bottom of your bed? I was paralyzed.
She went to touch it. She went to touch it.
No. I didn't touch it, but I had an inclination to, because it looked so real. But I felt a strong pushback. The Lord had stopped me from interacting with that.
So you could move when this happened, or no? You could.
I could move. I could move that thing, that apparition. It started pixelating into the atmosphere, so it was no longer there, but it was there for like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, right.
But
so people all over the world have these visions. Now, sleep paralysis, they say, is a medical disorder that just comes and goes with some people. The interesting thing, because I had the experience, the interesting thing with sleep paralysis is that amongst a certain cohort of people that have sleep paralysis, they will have there's a word for it. I can't remember, but they have a nightmare associated with the sleep paralysis, and they have a vision. And now, I didn't read about this. I didn't look at a book to see this before I had these dreams. It was only well and truly after they ended that I started thinking about them and wondering what the hell was that segment of my life all about. And then I started to research it, and I found out. Anyway, the long and short of it is that I saw a man, a dark figure, like a shadowy figure with deep black eyes. And this figure would be in my room. This figure would approach the bed, and eventually this figure spoke to me. And the only way that I got out of this paralysis in the presence of this very bad figure, whatever it was by praying the Lord's Prayer. And so I never want to have those dreams again, but they happened. And as I say, doctors write it off as just some sort of medical condition. But it's interesting how all these disparate people the world over, from aeons, from ages past, have all had the same vision of this shadowy man that they sense was very evil. So,
and that's how I feel when I have I haven't had paralysis for a very long time, but it's happened to me on a couple of occasions. And there's you can feel this almost like a hand coming on your throat, and a pressing down on your chest.
That's it.
That's what I would.
That's exactly what I felt in the final one. Yep.
And then my vocal cords are completely arrested. I cannot speak. I can't move.
That's it. You have it.
I can't say the name of Jesus. I have to think it. And then eventually I just keep thinking Jesus. And then I try and I'd kind of murmur his name with my lips, but it's like you get complete spasm of your face and you can't say anything.
Yep.
So it's pretty terrifying the very first time that happens. The second time you know what you're dealing with. And And it's, you know, it's just these demons that, in my opinion, and what I believe, not sure about you, George, but for me, I believe that this is demonic activity.
It was
demonic. And it's completely, you know, these spirits have no control at the end of the day. They can do all they can to play the little games with you, but when you have the fear of the Lord, they have to submit to the authority of Jesus, to the name of 100%. Jesus. And we're covered by the blood. So there's no weapon formed against us that will prosper.
Indeed. I completely agree with what you've just said then. They can try to scare us. They can try to do this, but at the name of Jesus, they're the ones that flee.
100%. Yeah. This has been a really great conversation, George. I'm going to personally, I have to head off. Dia, I'm not sure if you're going to stay around, but what's your plans?
I'm happy to chat to George after we've stopped recording for 5 or 10 minutes, but let's maybe have him pray us out and we wrap up this particular episode. Yeah, that's how we've been ending our episodes. We're making our guests pray.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
All right. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, thank you for the time that we've shared here this evening on this podcast. Don't be deceived. May the stories that we've told, the life experience, and the testimony that we've shared here this evening be a blessing to all of those who listen to it. And may you and all of your angels and the forces of good protect everyone from the snares and wiles of the devil. And we pray all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of Don't Be Deceived.